She was 16 when they came for her. They told her family it was work, factory work, good pay, a chance to help the war effort. Her mother packed a small bag, said goodbye, expected her back in a few months. She never came back the same. Her name was Park Du-ri. And what happened to her? What happened to hundreds of thousands of women across Asia between 1932 and 1945 was one of the most systematically denied war crimes of the 20th century. Japan didn't just commit it. For decades, they paid lawyers, pressured governments, and rewrote textbooks to make sure you never found out. This is what they buried. In 1932, the Japanese Imperial Army had a problem. Not a military one, a political one. Japanese soldiers had just massacred thousands of civilians in Shanghai. The international outcry was severe. Military commanders were under pressure. And somewhere in that pressure, a decision was made. Not to stop the violence, but to redirect it. Lieutenant General Okamura Yasuji proposed a solution. Establish a system of comfort stations, controlled facilities where soldiers could access women on a scheduled, managed basis. The logic, as horrifying as it sounds, was bureaucratic. Reduce random sexual violence against civilian populations by creating a formalized system of sexual slavery instead. The first station opened in Shanghai in 1932. By 1937, after the fall of Nanking, where Japanese troops killed an estimated 200,000 civilians and committed mass rape in what became known as the Nanking Massacre, the program expanded rapidly. The army didn't just permit it, they funded it, organized it, and provided military transport. It was not a side effect of war. It was policy. At its height, the Comfort Woman system operated across Japan's entire empire: Korea, China, the Philippines, Indonesia, Taiwan, Burma, and the Pacific Islands. Recruitment methods varied. Some women were outright kidnapped. Others were deceived, promised nursing jobs, factory positions, domestic work. Brokers, often working with local collaborators, were paid per woman delivered. In occupied territories, Japanese soldiers simply entered villages and took who they wanted. The majority, historians estimate between 70 and 80%, were Korean. Korea was a Japanese colony since 1910, which made its population especially vulnerable. Young women, often from poor rural families, had no legal recourse, no government to appeal to, no rights that the occupying power was required to respect. Once inside the system, escape was almost impossible. Women were moved between stations, kept in debt bondage, charged for food, clothing, medical visits, which meant they were told they could never technically leave until the debt was paid. The debt never got paid. The stations were run with Japanese military precision. Tickets were issued. Schedules were posted. Officers had different time slots than enlisted men. There were inspection records, medical records, all of it documented, filed, stamped with official seals. The paper trail existed. That becomes important later. This is the part that's hardest to say plainly, but it has to be said plainly because softening it is its own form of erasure. Women in comfort stations were raped, repeatedly, daily, by anywhere from a few men to 30 or 40 soldiers in a single day. Those who resisted were beaten. Some were killed as examples. Pregnancy was handled through forced abortions or through drugs, injections the women were told were vitamins. Medical inspections were not for the women's benefit. They were to protect the soldiers from disease. Survivors described a psychological survival strategy that many of them developed, leaving their minds somewhere else, thinking about their mothers, counting something, anything, to get through. Kim Hak-soon was the first Korean survivor to speak publicly. That was 1991. She was in her 60s by then. She had carried this for almost 50 years. When she finally spoke, she said she came forward because she was going to die soon, and she refused to die without the truth being on record. Others followed. Women from Korea, the Philippines, China, the Netherlands, Dutch women who had been held in Indonesian camps. All of them old. All of them having lived their entire adult lives with what had been done to them. Many had never married. Many had never told their own children. The shame had been directed inward, the way shame always is when power goes unpunished. Japan's official position, held for decades, was simple. There was no system. The women were voluntary civilian contractors. Any suffering was unfortunate but unorganized. The Japanese government had nothing to do with it. Then, in 1992, historian Yoshiaki Yoshimi found the documents. In the archives of Japan's defense agency, a government building, not a hidden vault, Yoshimi discovered internal military memos explicitly ordering the establishment of comfort stations and regulating their operation. The documents bore the signatures of senior military officials. They had been sitting in a government archive, unredacted, for 47 years. The Japanese government was forced to respond. In 1993, Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono issued what became known as the Kono Statement, officially acknowledging that the military had been involved, that coercion had occurred, and expressing feelings of apology and remorse. It should have been the end of the denial. It wasn't. In the decades that followed, Japanese nationalist politicians worked steadily to walk back the Kono Statement. Textbooks were revised. Officials publicly questioned whether coercion had really happened. In 2015, Japan and South Korea reached a bilateral agreement, $8.3 million to a foundation for survivors, which Japan declared a final and irreversible resolution. Survivors were not consulted in the negotiations. Most rejected the agreement outright. Of the estimated 200,000 women who passed through the comfort station system, fewer than 100 verified Korean survivors were still alive by the time any official acknowledgement came. Most had died waiting. The last recorded survivor, Lee Young-soo, was still testifying before international bodies in her 90s, still telling the same story, still being told in various diplomatic languages that the matter was settled.
There's a reason this story keeps getting relitigated. It's not just about the past. It's about what a government is willing to say happened versus what actually happened. It's about who gets to decide when something is resolved. It's about the specific cruelty of forcing survivors to spend their entire lives not just living with what was done to them, but fighting to have it acknowledged at all. The comfort women didn't ask for monuments. Most of them, for most of their lives, asked for one thing: say it happened. Say it was wrong. Say it officially, clearly, without conditions. Some countries never manage that. History doesn't bury itself. Someone always does the digging.